I don't know how to
I
start this
know.
without sounding dramatic, but
I
here goes
guess.
nothing. I still dream about the woman who ruined every relationship I tried to build after her. I was 24, broke, insecure, and stupidly hopeful. She was 34, brilliant in a way I didn't understand, and carrying more secrets than our whole town combined. And before anyone judges, no, this wasn't supposed to happen. Not the way it did. Not as deeply as it did. Certainly not for as long as it lasted. I grew up in a small Midwestern town where everyone knows everyone, and somehow nobody knows a damn thing. You'd think that with a population barely scraping 8,000 souls, you'd see everything coming. But I never saw her coming, not even close. Back then, my life was painfully predictable. Wake up, work the early shift at the hardware store, grab a cheap lunch at the same diner, scroll through job boards pretending I was ever going to leave town, go home, repeat. If someone asked me what I wanted from life, I couldn't answer. I didn't know. I just knew I didn't want this, the sameness, the fog, the quiet disappointment I carried like a coat I couldn't take off. Then one late September afternoon, she walked into the hardware store. I swear the room changed temperature. Not in some cinematic, everything freezes way, but in a suddenly I'm hyper-aware of every part of my body way. She wore a dark green coat, her hair still wet from the drizzle outside, and she had this expression like she was trying very hard not to be seen. That should have been my first clue. She didn't want attention. She moved like someone used to being watched, someone who'd learned how to make herself smaller when needed. I didn't know her yet. Not really. But something about her pulled me in, quietly, dangerously. "Hi," she said, shaking off her hair. "Do you guys carry heavy-duty cable ties?" I froze. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She smiled. And that smile, felt like it was meant specifically for me, though I'd later learned she smiled like that to hide things. I helped her find what she needed, stumbling over my words like the inexperienced small-town kid I was. She didn't make fun of me. She didn't flirt either. She just looked at me with this calm, confident warmth, the kind that makes you want to tell her everything without her asking. Her name was Olivia. I learned that only because our manager insisted we write down customer names for some stupid internal receipt system. When she left the store, her name stayed on my tongue like a secret I had no right to keep. For the next 2 weeks, I saw her everywhere. At the grocery store, at the coffee shop, even at the river trail where people pretended to hike. But every time I saw her, she seemed elsewhere. In her head, in her past, in some place far from our sleepy little town. One evening, though, everything changed. I'd gone to the diner for my usual late dinner, meatloaf special, extra gravy, because I had no self-respect in my 20s. And there she was, sitting alone in a booth, staring at a notebook that looked like it held the weight of her entire life. The place was nearly empty. Just her, me, and a waitress who was too busy scrolling through her phone to care about anything. I told myself not to stare. I failed. She looked up. Our eyes met. And she almost smiled, but not the polite store smile. Not the practiced one. This was smaller, softer, real. "Hey," she said. "From the hardware store, right?" I nodded, trying not to look like I'd forgotten how breathing worked. "Sit with me," she asked. And that was the moment, the exact moment, my life bent in a direction I never saw coming. I sat across from her, trying not to look like a kid who'd
What
just been
are you
invited to the
doing
pool
here?
table. Up close, she looked different.
You really...
Not older, just sharper. Like she noticed everything, even the things you tried to hide. Her eyes were this muted hazel color, soft but observant in a way that made me want to straighten my posture. "I didn't mean to interrupt your dinner," she said, closing her notebook carefully, like whatever was inside was fragile. "You just look like you could use company." I laughed under my breath. "Is it that obvious?" "A little." Her lips curled into a half-smile. "But in a good way. You seem honest." Nobody had ever described me like that. People usually said things like quiet, or nice, or works hard when pushed. Honest felt unexpectedly intimate. The waitress drifted over, took my order, and disappeared again. When we were alone, Olivia leaned back slightly and studied me, not in a judgmental way, but in a curious, assessing way. "So," she said, brushing her thumb along the edge of her coffee mug, "what's your story?" The question hit harder than it should have. In a town where everyone knows you, nobody ever really asks who you are. They just assume. I hesitated. "I don't have much of a story," I said finally. "Just work. Family. trying to figure things out. That's still a story, she replied. Just a quiet one. And yours? I asked before I could stop myself. That's when something flickered across her face. A quick, almost invisible tension. Not fear. Not sadness. Something else. Something I wouldn't understand for months. My story's complicated, she said softly. Messy. Maybe another time. Before I could ask more, my food arrived, and for a while, we just talked about nothing. Weather, the town, the terrible diner coffee, the even worse service. But even the small talk felt charged. Not romantic, not yet. Just connected. Like she saw through the walls I didn't know I'd built. When the dinner rush, all 4 people, finally trickled in, she glanced at the clock and started gathering her things. I should go, she said, slipping the notebook into her bag. Thank you for sitting with me. I didn't do anything. You showed up, she said. Sometimes that's enough. She paused, then scribbled something on a napkin and slid it across the table. Just in case, she added. Her number. I tried to play it cool, but my pulse was practically pounding in my ears. She laughed lightly, noticing exactly what I was trying to hide. Good night, she said. And then she walked out, leaving me with her phone number, the smell of her perfume lingering in the booth, and the overwhelming sense that my life had just shifted gears. For the next 2 days, I stared at that napkin like it held some ancient prophecy. Should I call? Text? Wait until I didn't seem desperate? Pretend I wasn't thinking about her constantly? I gave myself 48 hours. I lasted 17. Finally, around 9 p.m., I sent the most painfully generic text in human history. Hey, it's me. From the diner. I almost threw my phone across the room. I sounded like someone who'd never talked to a woman in his life. But her reply came fast. Too fast. Hi. I was hoping you'd reach out. My chest tightened. She'd been waiting? We talked for hours. Not flirting, just real conversation. Work. Books. Small town weirdness. Music. Careers we didn't chase. Choices we weren't proud of. She listened in a way that made me feel like my words mattered. Like I mattered. At one point she wrote, "You remind me of who I used to be." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. By midnight, my cheeks hurt from smiling. Something was forming between us, something careful, fragile, but undeniably there. Before we said goodnight, she sent one last message. Come by the river tomorrow around sunset. If you want. I reread that text 100 times. Because the truth was, I wanted. More than I should have. More than made sense. More than I realized at the time. The next evening, I got to the river 20 minutes early. I told myself it was just to enjoy the view, but really, I was terrified of being late. The sun was still high enough to cast that warm gold across the water, the kind that makes a small town look almost magical if you squint hard enough. I kept checking my phone, then my watch, then my phone again. At exactly 6:03 p.m., she appeared. She walked along the trail with her hands in her pockets, hair loosely tied back, wearing a navy blue sweater that made her look softer, younger, more relaxed. When she reached me, she stopped, smiled, and tilted her head slightly. You're early, she said. You're late. I shot back, before realizing the words had actually come out of my mouth. She raised an eyebrow. Then she laughed, really laughed, for the first time since I met her. It was quiet but genuine, like something inside her had unclenched. Okay, she said, stepping closer. Fair enough. We sat near the water, not too close, not too far. The river moved slowly, dragging the last of the summer leaves along with it. For a while, neither of us said anything. It wasn't awkward, just comfortable. So, she began, drawing a line in the dirt with her shoe. Why did you come? I shrugged. You asked. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. She looked at me, really looked. Why did you say yes? I should have said something casual, curiosity, boredom, whatever. But the truth slipped out faster than I could filter it. Because you make me feel like someone worth knowing. Her eyes softened a little. That's a dangerous thing to say to someone like me. What does that mean? That maybe you shouldn't trust me so easily. I didn't reply because I didn't know how. But something in her voice, some small fracture behind the words, made me want to ask more. Before I could, she changed the subject. Do you ever feel like you were meant for something else? She asked. Like your life got stuck on the wrong track. All the time, I said. Every day. She nodded slowly, as if that answer meant more to her than I realized. We talked for an hour, maybe more, about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, fears we hadn't said aloud before. The future, hers uncertain, mine undefined. She told me she'd moved to town only 4 months earlier, needed a reset, but didn't specify from what. I didn't push. At some point she pulled her knees to her chest and said quietly, "You're easy to be around." "So are you," I said. She gave a tiny smile. "No, I'm not. But thank you for pretending." There was a vulnerability to her then, so sharp it almost felt wrong to look at. I wanted to reach out, put a hand on her shoulder, or say something comforting, but I didn't know what was allowed. The sun dipped lower, turning the river to molten orange. She stood up first. "I should head back," she said. "Work in the morning." I rose too. We stood facing each other, just close enough that I could smell her perfume, something faint and clean, like sandalwood. "Can I see you again?" I asked. She hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she said. "Why not?" Her jaw tightened. "Because I don't do complicated, and I don't want to hurt you." "You won't," I said, even though I had no idea. She sighed, closing her eyes briefly as if debating something with herself. When she opened them again, she stepped forward and rested her hand lightly against my arm. "Not romantic, not intimate, just human. It's not about trust," she whispered. "It's about timing." And then she let go. "Good night," she said, turning away. I watched her walk down the trail until she disappeared behind the tree line. I didn't move for a long time, because something told me the timing she feared was already starting to run out. For the next week, Olivia and I barely spoke. Not because anything bad happened, but because she seemed to disappear into her own world again. Her texts grew shorter, slower, more careful. She always replied, but never initiated. I wasn't stupid. I understood what was happening. She was pulling back. So I tried to give her space. Tried being the key word. Every morning, I told myself I wouldn't text her first. Every afternoon, I broke that promise. She never ignored me, but her responses stayed clipped. "Busy day? Hope you're well. Long shift. Maybe we'll talk later. Sorry, not free tonight." It felt like trying to hold water in my hands. Then, on a Friday evening, just when I'd accepted that whatever we had was fading, she showed up at the hardware store. I didn't see her come in. One second I was stocking shelves, and the next I heard her voice behind me. "Hey." I turned so fast I nearly knocked over a box of screws. She looked tired, really tired. Not the kind you fix with sleep, but the kind that comes from fighting something inside yourself. "Olivia," I said, trying to hide how relieved I was. "Didn't expect to see you." "I know," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to be here." There were other customers around, so we moved to a quieter aisle. She stayed near the shelves, running her fingers along the edge like she needed something physical to hold on to. "I'm sorry I've been distant," she said. "I've just had a lot going on." "You don't owe me an explanation." "I do, actually." She lifted her eyes to mine. They looked darker than usual. "I like talking to you," she said. "More than I should. And that scares me." It took me a moment to process that. "Why should that scare you?" "Because you're young," she said. "Because you still see the world with this openness. And I don't want to take that from you." "You're not taking anything. You don't know that." There was a crack in her voice, small, but unmistakable. I'd never heard her sound fragile before. Strong, guarded, distant, yes. But fragile? That was new. I stepped closer, but not enough to overwhelm her. Just enough so she knew I wasn't going anywhere. "If being around me scares you," I said softly, "then maybe that means it's real." She breathed in slowly. "Real isn't always good. Sometimes it is." She looked away. "Not in my experience." Before I could respond, she shook her head, straightened her posture, and the guarded version of her slipped back into place like a mask. "I didn't come here to drag you into my problems," she said. "I came because," she paused, exhaling shakily, "because I missed you." That admission hit harder than anything she'd said before. "You could have just told me," I said. "I know." Her voice cracked again. "But I'm not good at this." She dug into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Look," she said, pressing it into my hand. "I'm not asking for anything. I want you to know me a little better, if you still want to." "What is it?" "Something I wrote," she said. "A piece of something I was too afraid to say out loud." She stepped back, as if giving me space to reject it. Or her. "I need to go," she said. "But, if you read that and still want to talk, meet me at the old railway bridge tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. Olivia." Don't decide now, she said quickly. Just read it first. And then she left. I didn't move for a full minute. When I finally looked down, I unfolded the paper. It wasn't long, barely a page. But the handwriting was rushed, uneven, emotional. At the top, she'd written, "This is the part of me I never show anyone." My hands shook slightly as I continued reading. What she had written would change everything I thought I knew about her. And about us. I didn't read the note right away. I know that sounds stupid. She'd basically handed me a piece of her soul, and I just stood there holding it like it might explode. But the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of what she'd written. Afraid of what it would mean for us. Afraid that whatever wall she'd been hiding behind was about to come down, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to see what was behind it. I waited until I got home, sat on the edge of my bed, and forced myself to open it. Her handwriting was hurried, slanted, like she'd written it while shaking. "I'm not who you think I am." That was the first line. The next part was messier, emotional, tangled, like she'd tried to rewrite it a dozen times before giving up. She wrote about leaving a long-term relationship that had broken her down slowly, quietly, in ways that didn't leave bruises but left scars. She wrote about spending years feeling like she was the only adult in a two-person life, how she'd carried someone who didn't want to be carried, about losing herself, about pushing away people who cared, about building routines that were safe but lonely. She wrote about waking up one day and realizing she didn't recognize her own thoughts anymore. She wrote about running, not physically, but emotionally. She ran from anything that felt like it might pull her back into dependence or obligation or vulnerability. She wrote, "I'm scared of needing someone. I'm scared of being needed. I'm scared you'll look at me like I'm something good, and I won't know how to live up to it." My chest tightened reading that. Then came the line that hit the hardest. "You're gentle in a way I forgot people could be." And that terrifies me. I read that sentence at least 5 times. When I finished the letter, I set it down on my nightstand and just sat there in the quiet, staring at the wall. I had known she carried something heavy, but I didn't know it ran that deep. I didn't know she'd been hurt in ways she still couldn't articulate out loud. And now she wanted me to meet her at the old railway bridge. 8 p.m. No promises, no expectations, just meet her. I looked at the clock. 7:02 p.m. I didn't even think. I grabbed my jacket and left. The sky was already turning violet blue by the time I reached the bridge. It sat on the edge of town, half abandoned, half claimed by teenagers who needed somewhere to drink cheap beer. Tonight, though, it was empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you've stepped out of time. I showed up early again. 7:46. My heart was thumping like I'd run the whole way there. I kept replaying her words in my mind. The way she'd written them, like a confession and a warning at the same time. At 8:03, I started to worry she wouldn't come. At 8:06, I heard footsteps. She approached slowly, hands in the pockets of her coat, hair blowing across her face in the wind. She stopped a few feet from me, studying my expression like she was trying to figure out the verdict before I said anything. "You read it," she said. "I did. And you still came?" "Yes." She exhaled shakily, looking away at the river below. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But not because of what you wrote. Because I didn't want to say the wrong thing." "There's no right thing," she said. "I didn't give you that letter to make anything happen. I wanted you to know who you're dealing with." "I'm dealing with you," I said. "That's all I need to know." She laughed under her breath, sad, disbelieving, like she didn't trust that kindness belonged to her. "You shouldn't make me sound like something fragile," she said. "I don't think you're fragile." She looked at me finally, really looked. "Then what do you think I am?" I stepped closer, careful, deliberate. "I think you're someone who's been strong for too long." Her breath hitched, just slightly, but I felt it. For the first time since I met her, she didn't step back. She whispered, "I don't know how to let someone in without losing myself." "Then don't lose yourself," I said. "Just let me stand next to you." Her eyes softened. Her shoulders dropped. The tension that always wrapped around her loosened, if only a fraction. "I don't know if I can do this," she murmured. "You don't have to know," I said. "Just don't run tonight." She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, she whispered, "I'm still here, aren't I?" And that was the moment, right then, that everything between us shifted. Not into romance. Not yet. But into something that would pull us both deeper than we expected. We stayed on the bridge longer than I expected. Not talking much, just standing there, leaning against the rusted railing, listening to the river move beneath us like a slow heartbeat. The moon was rising behind the treeline, turning the water silver. It made everything feel softer, quieter, almost sacred. Olivia wasn't touching me, but she was close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body through the cold air. Every few minutes, she'd inhale sharply, as if steadying herself, then let the breath out slow, like she was afraid she'd disappear if she moved too fast. At one point she said, "You don't ask a lot of questions. I don't want to push you. You could push a little." So I did. "What made you leave?" I asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she traced the rust on the railing with her finger, following the line of oxidation like it was guiding her somewhere. "I stayed too long," she finally said, "in a life that wasn't mine." "Why?" "Because it was easier to stay than admit I'd wasted years." She laughed without humor. "Because I thought it would get better. Because I kept telling myself I owed him another chance." "Him," I repeated, careful. "My ex." She didn't look at me, but her voice tightened. "We were together 7 years. I thought that meant something. Turns out I was the only one putting in the work." I wanted to ask more, but she shook her head. "I don't want to talk about him," she said. "Not tonight." "Okay." She smiled gratefully. "You're good at that." "At what?" "Stepping back when I need you to." I didn't know what to do with that, so I just nodded. A long silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence where two people exist side by side without needing to fill the space. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You remind me of who I used to be." I turned to her. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "Both," she said honestly. "You're honest. You're hopeful. You see people the way they want to be seen, not the way they've shown themselves. I used to be like that." Her voice softened. "Then life happened." I swallowed. "I'm not naive." "I didn't say you were. You're just open. And people like me? We break open people like you without meaning to." "You won't break me." "You say that now." She sighed, more tired than sad. "But the truth is, I don't know how to be someone's beginning. I only know how to be someone's ending." It hurt hearing her say that. Not because I believed it, but because she did. "Then be something else," I said quietly. She finally turned to face me. The wind lifted strands of her hair across her lips. She didn't move them away. For the first time, she didn't hide the vulnerability in her eyes. "I don't know how. That's why I'm here." Her chest rose and fell shakily. Then she took a step closer. And another. Until she was right in front of me. Close enough that our breath mixed in the cold air. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. I don't want you to think I'm leading you somewhere I can't stay." "I'm not asking you to stay," I said. "I'm asking you to let this be real. For tonight. For now." Her lips parted, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Then she lowered her forehead to my chest. Not a hug, not an embrace. Just a moment of surrender. Soft, brief, fragile. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her be there. After a minute, she pulled back slowly. "I haven't been this close to someone in a long time," she said. "I haven't been this close to someone ever." That made her smile. A small, warm, surprised smile that shifted something between us, something subtle but unmistakable. "We should go," she said at last. "It's getting cold." She started walking off the bridge, but after a few steps, she looked back. "Walk me home." It wasn't a question. It was an invitation. And I followed her without hesitation. What I didn't know then was that the walk back would be the start of something neither of us was ready for, something messy, intense, addictive, and far more complicated than either of us expected. I didn't sleep much after that night in Emily's apartment. Not because anything happened, but because nothing happened. And somehow, that felt like the turning point. She trusted me enough to fall asleep with me there. She trusted me enough to let me see her raw, exhausted, scared, and honest. And when I left the next morning, walking home through the quiet streets of our tiny town, the sunrise barely lighting the rooftops, I realized I was in way deeper than I'd ever expected. But the world doesn't let you stay in those fragile, dreamlike moments for long. Within a week, something shifted. It started at the coffee shop. I had my usual shift, and Emily walked in like she always did, but this time she looked tense. She ordered quickly, avoided eye contact, and stood by the end of the counter, scrolling through her phone like she was trying to distract herself from something gnawing at her. I tried to keep it normal. "Rough morning?" I asked. "Just tired," she said, offering a smile that never reached her eyes. She grabbed her drink and left. That would have been nothing. Everyone has bad days. But by afternoon, I got a text from her. Can we talk? Tonight? Nothing good in my life had ever followed those words. When I got to her place, the lights were dimmed, and she was sitting on the couch with her legs tucked under her, hair pulled back, sweatshirt sleeves covering her hands. She looked smaller than usual. I talked to my ex today, she said without even easing into it. My stomach dropped. Okay, I said slowly. Why? He called about the house. Some paperwork he never finished when I moved out. It should have been nothing, but, hearing his voice, it brought up more than I expected. She wasn't crying, but she was clearly shaken. I sat across from her, leaning forward. Do you want to talk about it? No, she said. And then, contradiction in her own voice. But I think I have to. She told me things she'd only hinted at before. About how her ex was charming in public, but cold and dismissive at home. How he'd slowly convinced her that her dreams were unrealistic. That she was too emotional. That she should be grateful anyone put up with her intensity. How she'd spent the last year with him feeling like she was fading. And I didn't leave because I suddenly got strong, she said. I left because I felt like a ghost. She looked up at me. And then I met you. And suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. That should have made me feel good, but instead, it scared me. Because I wasn't some hero who knew what he was doing. I was 24 and winging it every single day of my life. I didn't want to be the rebound, the distraction, the temporary brightness before she found someone more stable, more mature, more everything. So I said the stupidest possible thing. Maybe you should take some time to figure yourself out. Her face stiffened instantly. Are you saying you want space? No, I said too quickly. I'm saying, you've been through a lot. I don't want to make things harder. She stood up. You're not making things harder. You're making things better. That's what scares me. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Her ex again. And the way she flinched when she saw his name, that did something to me. Do you want me to leave? I asked quietly. She shook her head. No, I want you to stay. But I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't want to ruin this because I'm still messed up from him. I moved to sit beside her. Then let's figure it out together. Slow. No pressure. She let out a shaky breath and leaned her head on my shoulder. For the first time since meeting her, it wasn't chemistry or curiosity pulling us together. It was something heavier, deeper, and scarier. And I didn't know it yet, but the next weeks would test that promise in ways I wasn't prepared for. Because her ex wasn't done inserting himself into her life. Not even close. The trouble began 3 days later. I was wiping down tables during a slow afternoon shift when Emily walked in, looking pale and wired. Not tired, wired. Like someone who'd had too much caffeine and too little peace. She didn't order anything. Just walked straight to me. We need to talk, she whispered. My throat tightened. Here. No. Outside. I followed her out the back door into the small alley behind the shop. She kept glancing behind her, like she expected someone to follow. Emily, what's going on? She took a deep breath. He showed up at my job. Her ex, did he say something to you? I asked. He said he wants to finish the conversation. He asked who I've been spending so much time with. He asked if I'm trying to replace him. He said I'm making stupid decisions again. My jaw clenched. Did he threaten you? Not directly, she said. But he doesn't have to. I know how he works. She wrapped her arms around herself, rubbing her sleeves like she was trying to warm up. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. I didn't want to drag you into any of this. You're not dragging me into anything, I said. I'm here because I want to be. She looked up at me, eyes shining with something between fear and hope. But then she shook her head. No, you don't understand. He gets possessive. He watches people. He collects information. He doesn't let things go. I hesitated. Do you think he's dangerous? She paused. And that pause told me everything. I don't want him near you, she said softly. Or near us. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. What do you want me to do? I don't know, she whispered. I don't want to run from him forever. And I don't want to hide. But I also don't want him to hurt someone because of me. I reached for her hand without thinking. She squeezed mine hard, like she was hanging onto a railing in a storm. But before either of us could say more, my manager poked his head out. Break's over, he said. We've got customers. Emily let go of my hand instantly, almost too fast, like she was afraid of being seen. I'll call you later, she murmured. And then she disappeared around the corner. That night, she didn't call. The next morning, she still hadn't. By noon, I was pacing my apartment, checking my phone every few minutes. My mind kept replaying every worst-case scenario. I finally texted, "Are you okay?" No answer. 2 hours later, I tried again. "Please let me know you're safe." Still nothing. Around 7 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. Not with a message, a call. "Emily." I answered immediately. "Emily? Where?" But her voice cracked through the speaker, frantic and breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have called. Are you safe?" I cut in. "Yes. I'm home. I panicked." He called me again. He said he wanted to clear the air. And then he asked if I'd been seeing someone younger. My stomach twisted. How would he know? "I don't know," she whispered. "But I think he's been watching me." Silence hung between us like fog. "I'm coming over," I said. "No," she said quickly. "Not tonight. I need a minute to breathe. I don't want him to see us together, not until I figure out what he wants." I hated that. I hated every part of it. But I also heard the fear in her voice. "Okay," I said. "But please, if anything happens, call me." "I will," she whispered. "I promise." Neither of us hung up right away. We stayed on the line, breathing, waiting, listening, like we were scared the connection would break if we let go too fast. Finally, she murmured, "Good night." "Good night," I said, though nothing about it felt good. I didn't sleep much, because deep down, I knew something was building, something we couldn't avoid forever. The next few days felt like walking on glass. Emily kept in touch, but only through texts, short, careful messages that felt like they were written while she was constantly checking over her shoulder. She hadn't seen her ex again, but the anxiety never left her face. You could hear it even in the pauses between her words. On the fourth day, she finally asked to meet. But not at her place. Not at mine. Not anywhere familiar. She picked a quiet little park near the edge of town, the kind of place where parents brought their kids during the day and teenagers smoked behind the trees at night. When I got there, the sun was low, painting everything in gold and long shadows. Emily sat on a bench, hoodie pulled tight around her, hair in a messy bun. Even from a distance, I could tell she hadn't slept. I sat beside her. "You look exhausted." "Thanks," she said with a weak laugh. Exactly the confidence boost I needed. But then she sighed and leaned back. "I didn't bring you here to talk about him. I needed a break." "A break. From being scared all the time," she said. "From thinking every car behind me is him. From overthinking every message. From feeling like my life is being split into before and after again." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "And," she added quietly, "I missed you." That hit harder than I expected. We sat there for a minute, letting that settle, the wind rustling through the trees like it was trying to fill the silence. She pulled her legs up onto the bench, turning toward me. "Do you still want to do this?" she asked. "Us? Even with all this chaos?" "Yeah," I said without hesitation. "I do." She exhaled shakily. "Good. Because I do too. Even if it scares me." We talked for a while, about nothing and everything. About her job, my classes, childhood stories, dumb embarrassing moments. It felt like we were trying to rebuild something that had cracked under pressure. Slowly, carefully. But the peace didn't last. It was almost dark when she glanced over my shoulder and her entire body tensed. I turned. A man stood at the edge of the park. Not close, but close enough. He wasn't moving toward us. He wasn't waving. He wasn't yelling. Just watching. Emily's whisper cut through me. "That's him." My pulse started pounding as the man took a step forward. Then another. Not fast, but slow. Deliberate. "Emily," I said quietly, "we should go." She nodded, but she couldn't take her eyes off him. I stood up first, then helped her up. We walked toward the path that led to the parking lot. I didn't look back until I heard footsteps behind us. He was following. Not running. Not calling out. Just following. We reached my car, and I unlocked it with shaking hands. Emily got in. I circled to the driver's side, jumped in, and pulled the door shut. The man stopped a few meters away, hands in his pockets, head tilted like he was studying an insect. Emily whispered, "Please drive." I turned the key, and the engine sputtered awake. I backed out and pulled away, my eyes flicking constantly between the road and the rearview mirror. He didn't chase us. He didn't move at all. He just watched the car disappear. Emily sat curled up in the passenger seat, gripping the seatbelt so tightly her knuckles turned white. "He never used to follow me," she whispered. "He never used to show up like that." "What changed?" I asked. You, she said softly. Us. We didn't talk the rest of the drive. When I dropped her off, she didn't go inside right away. She stood by the door and looked at me like she was seeing the cost of everything that was happening. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, she said. You didn't pull me in, I replied. I walked in. She gave a small, trembling smile. Then she went inside. I sat in my car for a long time afterward, trying to slow my heartbeat, trying to make sense of everything. But the truth was undeniable. Things had crossed a line, and whatever came next wouldn't be something we could handle with quiet conversations in parks. The storm was finally here. I never thought I'd find myself standing there, in that same small coffee shop where it all began, feeling a mix of nostalgia and relief. Emily was already there, her favorite black coffee in hand, sitting at our usual corner table. I could feel my heart pounding like it did the first time I saw her walk in, confident, aware, yet slightly mysterious. We exchanged smiles, the kind that don't need words. The air between us was warm but heavy with unspoken history. Months had passed since our last fight, the one that almost broke us, and in that time, we had learned more about ourselves and each other than I thought possible. I realized that love wasn't just about passion or sparks. It was about patience, understanding, and choosing each other every single day, even when things weren't perfect. So, you actually came, she said, a teasing smile tugging at the corner of her lips. I did, I replied, settling into the chair opposite her. I had to. After everything, I needed to see you, to talk. Honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Her eyes softened. I've been thinking about you too, more than I probably should have. She laughed quietly, the kind of sound that made the small cafe feel like our own private world. We talked for hours, not about the fights, not about the misunderstandings, but about everything else, our dreams, our fears, and the little moments that had shaped us. I told her about the job promotion I had been hesitant to take because I didn't want to leave her behind, and she admitted she had been scared of losing herself in the routine of our life together. We laughed at the ridiculous things we'd worried about, and for the first time in months, it felt like we were truly free. As the evening sun cast a golden glow through the windows, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers intertwined with mine, a silent promise that we were in this together, no matter how complicated things got. I guess, she started, hesitating for once. This is what people call figuring it out. Growing up, learning what really matters. Yeah, I said, squeezing her hand gently, and realizing that we're stronger together. After that day, our relationship transformed. We didn't rush or force things. We built them slowly, with care. Weekend hikes turned into spontaneous road trips, and quiet evenings at home became moments of connection instead of routine. Every argument became an opportunity to understand, every mistake a lesson. Emily showed me a world I'd never known, a life filled with depth, laughter, and, yes, a little chaos, but the kind that made life worth living. One night, as we sat on the rooftop of my apartment building, watching the city lights twinkle below, I realized that I loved her, not just for who she was, but for who I was when I was with her. I wasn't trying to impress her or hide my flaws. I was myself, completely and unapologetically. And she loved that version of me. I don't know what the future holds, I said softly, but I do know I want you in it. Always. She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. And I want you too. No matter how messy it gets, we'll figure it out. Together. That's when I truly understood the story of us wasn't about age, experience, or timing. It was about connection, trust, and the courage to embrace something real. Something that could withstand uncertainty, distance, and mistakes. And as we sat there, hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet sync, I knew that this, us, was worth every misstep, every awkward moment, every late-night doubt. We weren't perfect, but we were ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt entirely at peace with that. Because some love stories aren't about fireworks or instant passion. They're about the slow burn, the little moments, and the journey of discovering each other in a way that changes both of you forever. I leaned back, looked at her, and smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, we had already found something extraordinary.